Let's start with something we can all probably agree on. Assassin's Creed has changed a lot. Now, whether you see that as a good thing or a bad thing really depends on when you started your journey with the franchise. Some people started with the earlier games and loved the linear-focused character-driven storytelling. Others might have started with Odyssey or Valhalla and prefer the gigantic open-world RPG formula. Neither group is wrong, but the fact that there's even this divide kind of tells you everything. So the question becomes, what is Assassin's Creed right now? Originally, it was a super cool idea of historical fiction and sci-fi. You have this hidden war between the assassins and the Templars playing out across time, and the Animus tied it all together. The gameplay focused on a plethora of things. There was a strong emphasis on mechanically innovative parkour in dense cities. There was the idea of social stealth such as blending in with crowds and sitting on benches, and even the idea of black box missions. It had a really specific feel that only Assassin's Creed could pull off. I mean, there's a reason many of the best games out there have taken inspiration from the classic Assassin's Creed. It was that impactful on gaming as a whole. I mean, look at Ghost of Tsushima. Why do you think that game is always being called the best Assassin's Creed game Ubisoft never made? Look at Shadow of Mordor, which basically said, what if Assassin's Creed but in Middle-earth? Many popular games borrowed DNA from the climbing systems in Assassin's Creed. There's plenty of games that introduced eagle vision after Assassin's Creed did it. And speaking of classic Assassin's Creed, there was also the mystery side of the lore, such as the conspiracies with Abstergo and how they control the world. I mean, Ubisoft back then even had the balls to implement how real-life historical people were seen. They had goddamn Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, Nikola Tesla, Albert Einstein, you name it. That's the risk that they took. And all of that connected everything together. They weren't afraid to try new things. Nowadays, it feels a little different. Actually, saying a little different is a lie. It feels way different. The games are now more stretched out. They let you approach things in your own way. And that's fantastic for a lot of players. But at the same time, that original assassin identity has become more of an afterthought for modern Ubisoft instead of being the main focus. To be fair, that's not always a bad thing. The series needed to evolve. By the time Syndicate came out, people were already saying the formula was getting stale, and everything was pointing towards failure. So Ubisoft took a risk. They shifted direction with Origins, and that paid off in a lot of ways. It brought in a new fanbase entirely, and it showed everybody that Assassin's Creed could do more than just one thing. But you see, that shift also came with trade-offs. I mean, take the modern day story. That has gone completely off the rails. It's like they keep throwing ideas at the wall to see what sticks. First, it was a voiceless, mysterious character in first person. Then it was Layla Hassan. Then it was almost Basim, because they decided to abandon his story entirely for some strange reason. And now it's whatever this is. At this point, the Animus might as well just be Netflix. We should just boot up the game, and it should say to us, pick a historical time period and we'll stream your ancestors straight to your brain. Oh wait, it is like that. That's what the Animus Hub is for. God damn it. There's a reason so many people feel like the franchise has lost its identity, because it has. I wish I could defend those claims and say, no, you're wrong, but I just can't. It objectively has sadly lost its identity, and Ubisoft are milking it because it once held weight. I mean, that's why there's 10 Assassin's Creed games to release in the next 5 years. And since the premise of these games is always based on history, they can be set anywhere in time, and all they have to do is call it Assassin's Creed for it to do well. Now, make no mistake, that's not to say these newer games are bad. I love Origins. Odyssey was also pretty cool, and so was Shadows. The core idea still works. It's just wrapped in a different kind of game now. You've got bigger maps, much longer playtime, RPG mechanics. It's a new formula. Some people vibe with it, some don't, and that's fair. And that's what makes this whole does it need a reboot question so interesting, because the identity of Assassin's Creed has gotten messier over time, and a reboot in theory could be the one way to sharpen that identity again. Not to erase what came before, but to refocus on what made it feel special in the first place. Here's the thing about Assassin's Creed fans. We all care about this franchise deeply, and I don't mean that in the casual this is fun way. I mean that in terms of characters, its world building, the lore, or even the modern day story as messy as it's become. That's why so many people still talk about Ezio like he's a real person, because for a lot of us he kind of is. We watched him grow, from a cocky teenager in Florence to a wise old mentor in Constantinople. We followed him through every step of his life, game after game, and then eventually we witnessed his death in embers. And it wasn't just Ezio. Connor had more story to tell. Shay's betrayal of the assassins was begging for more exploration. Arno got one game and then was completely forgotten, even though Unity ended on a note that felt like the beginning of something deeper. Bayek needed that sequel. These characters were investments, they were set up to be part of something bigger, but that bigger never really came. Instead, we get constant resets. Every game now has a new protagonist in a new setting with absolutely no follow-up to the game before. And after a while, it started to feel like Ubisoft was just moving on. Not only from certain characters, but from everything those stories had built. Now, I get it. Reboots, spin-offs, standalone stories, these are all normal in long-running franchises. But there's a difference between evolving a series and just abandoning it. That's where a lot of the fan frustration comes from. When people say bring back Ezio, they don't literally mean resurrect him. What they're really saying is, can we please have continuity again? And that leads us straight into the whole Desmond vs Layla thing. Desmond, for all of his flaws, was at the center of the franchise. His story was the glue holding everything together. Without Desmond, there is no Assassin's Creed. And compared to the recent modern day where it feels like we're reliving somebody's memories for the sake of it, with Desmond, we relived his ancestors' memories to literally save the goddamn world. And as crazy as the lore got, it always came back to Desmond trying to make sense of his place in the world. Then Desmond dies and the franchise moves on. We then get whatever the hell Black Flag and Rogue was, which clearly Ubisoft were lost at that point and had no idea what they wanted to do, so let's move on from that. And then there's Layla Hassan as the new modern day character, and I'll be honest, she had potential, but the difference between her and Desmond is kind of night and day. Desmond's story had action, it had emotion, it had everything that you could want, and most importantly, the whole damn thing was focused on him. Layla, on the other hand, mostly just reacts to what's going on. Her story is not nearly as clear, and the story really shows us why we should care about her beyond the lore dumps. And to be fair, it's just sadly how she was written. Her modern day segments feel forced. You do a couple animus jumps, read some laptop emails, and hop back into history. And in Valhalla, spoilers ahead by the way, her story ends in a way that's fine, but it also raises more questions than answers because now there's Basim, and now we're 5 years deep into the Basim era, and we still don't know what the hell is going on with Basim either. That's what a lot of longtime fans are feeling right now. Not necessarily angry, but disconnected. Some people want a clean slate, others just want Ubisoft to finish what they started. Either way, it's very clear that the fanbase is split. You see this a lot in discussions about Mirage. Ubisoft positioned it as a return to roots, which would be a smaller game more focused on stealth and classic Assassin's Creed, and for some people it scratched that itch, but for almost everybody else it felt like a safe bet, a surface level throwback. The parkour was not at all like classic Assassin's Creed, the stealth was there to be fair, so that's cool. The story was mediocre at best, but not exactly groundbreaking, and the game just felt like it lacked a soul. So while Mirage looked like a return to roots on paper, it did not quite capture the heart of those older games. And that's where this whole conversation lands. A reboot could be good for clarity and direction. It could finally tie something all together again, whether that is by continuing old arcs, rewriting the modern day story entirely, or starting completely fresh with a plan that spans across multiple games like how Assassin's Creed 1 to Assassin's Creed 3 was. The franchise is at this weird crossroads. It can't keep doing what it's doing forever because the fatigue is real, and clearly Ubisoft knows this. Hence why we have Assassin's Creed Hexe, the Black Flag remake, the multiplayer, Assassin's Creed Jade, and all the crazy experiments coming down the line. But if they want to get players truly excited again, they need to stop thinking in terms of what setting haven't we done and start thinking about why people fell in love with this series to begin with. And maybe a reboot done right could be that spark. So let's say Ubisoft decides to hit the reset button and do a full-blown reboot of Assassin's Creed, meaning a clean slate. This would entail a new modern day character with a new story that spans across different games. Pretty much the same core ideas as the earlier games, but rebuilt with actual intent. What would that even fix? Honestly, quite a bit. First and foremost, it would help Assassin's Creed get its identity back. Right now the series is a little all over the place. I mean, there's gods and mythology, and then all of a sudden, boom, they release a back to basics game being Assassin's Creed Mirage. It's hard to say what Assassin's Creed even is anymore. A reboot would be Ubisoft's chance to say, here's what Assassin's Creed stands for going forward, and then actually stick with it. The modern day story is a big one too. Love it or hate it, it tied multiple games together with one of the better protagonists we've had. That's something the newer games have mostly abandoned, or at best sprinkled in awkwardly. A reboot would give them the chance to create a brand new modern day character, although I'd say just use Basim since he's interesting and not explored yet, and give him a planned storyline across multiple games. So think Desmond, but more developed from the jump. Not somebody who shows up every 10 hours to read a laptop, but a real protagonist who we see grow and change across time. I mean, they could also, if they wanted to, introduce Elijah, who is Desmond's illegitimate son in the comics. He's just disappeared, so why not introduce him into the mainline games? Or hey, what about Noah Kim? I think he's interesting enough in Forgotten Temple. And then in terms of the historical side of things, because yes, it's kind of bloated right now, the last few games are massive. Valhalla alone can eat up 100 hours of your life just to finish the main story. That's great for people who want to get lost in a world, but it also means the pacing is slow and a lot of what made Assassin's Creed feel focused is gone. Now, I know some people would be angry if Ubisoft just scrapped the RPG format altogether. I get it. I mean, I would too, because I actually like the RPG format. Those games brought in a ton of new fans. So here's my proposal instead of going full scorched earth. Split the franchise into two branches. Let the reboot focus on the actual Assassin's Creed formula. So that's linear style games with dense cities, character driven stories, classic Assassin's Creed parkour among many other things. Make it linear again. That's the version where Ubisoft Montreal takes the lead. Because when they want to, Ubisoft Montreal knows how to respect the law. Then in terms of the open world RPGs, give that branch to Ubisoft Quebec. Let them run wild with whatever they want. Let them add crazy RPG formulas with branching skill trees and all sorts of mythological elements. Basically do their thing. It's pretty clear by now that Ubisoft Quebec does not care much about the Assassin's Creed lore anyway, especially after what we've seen with Assassin's Creed Shadows, where the ezio and the Pieces of Eden were completely removed, and the whole Assassins vs Templar thing was shoved up to the side for both main characters. And to be honest, that's fine. They clearly want to make historical action RPGs, not lore-heavy focused Assassin's Creed games. So let them. Just don't call it the mainline branch of Assassin's Creed anymore. Keep that title reserved for the narrative-focused games, the ones that actually care about what the franchise was and could still be in this hypothetical reboot. Because a reboot, if done right, could finally bring clarity. It could say, here's the modern day story, here's the Assassin Order, here's the Templars, and here's why it all matters. Oh, and most importantly, here's a new character you're going to follow for the next 3 games. You know, thinking of it now, it's so simple to explain, especially as a fan talking about what I want. And it's something Assassin's Creed has not had in a long time, and that is direction. Okay, so here's the $1 million question, literally. Can Ubisoft even pull off a proper Assassin's Creed reboot? And I don't just mean a soft reboot like we have with Origins, I mean a full reset. Everything I've just mentioned with a clear vision for where the franchise is going, because that's what a real reboot is supposed to be. But if we're being completely honest, Ubisoft hasn't exactly earned a lot of trust lately. This is a company that's been stumbling for years now. Skull and Bones took over a decade to finally come out and ended up being a massive commercial flop. Then there's X-Defiant, which had a rocky launch and struggled to keep players. It was also quietly shut down despite Ubisoft claiming it was fine. And then of course the NFT drama. Ubisoft tried to release multiple NFT games behind the scenes hoping nobody would notice. Spoiler alert, they did, and people called them out pretty hard. Thinking about it more, the best way I can describe modern Ubisoft games is this. If they had come out during the PlayStation 3 era, they would have been considered groundbreaking. Seriously, if a game like Avatar Frontiers of Pandora or Star Wars Outlaws had launched in 2012 or 2013, people would have lost their minds. But the issue is that they didn't. They released now, and while it looks good visually, the environments are stunning, everything else about these games feels stuck in the past. The gameplay, the structure, the design philosophy, it just hasn't kept up with the rest of the gaming industry. Ubisoft games are polished on the surface, but underneath they're very dated, and we can all notice that more than ever. I mean, take a look at Death Stranding 2, look at Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, look at Expedition 33. These games are so innovative and unique that it makes every Ubisoft game look like it came out 15 years ago. Right now, the only things really keeping Ubisoft alive are Rainbow Six Siege, Far Cry and Assassin's Creed, and even those are not bulletproof anymore. They've been weirdly quiet about how Assassin's Creed Shadows is performing, which kind of says a lot. They refuse to say how many copies the game has sold, but other studios brag about that stuff with passion. Oh, and now there's the whole Tencent situation. That doesn't scream to me creative freedom. That screams we need money and we need money fast. which, let's be real, they do. So yes, Ubisoft is in a tough spot. They need a massive win. But you know, it's more complicated than just putting out another Assassin's Creed game with a new logo and calling it a day. That's not the kind of reboot I'm talking about here. What it really takes is actual creative commitment. It means committing to a new modern day character that has a planned out story across multiple games. It means cutting back the open world bloat and finally telling something that's memorable, something that we can all remember for years to come, like we do with Ezio, like we do with Edward. And the hard truth is, we don't know if current Ubisoft can actually pull it off, especially the current leadership. The same people greenlighting games like Assassin's Creed Jade and the multiplayer game and the constant NFT games are the ones in charge of creative direction. That's worrying. This is also the same company that refuses to add more motion capture into their games simply because they're lazy. Not because they don't have money, they do. They just refuse to do it. This is the same company that stirs up more controversy than I could even keep track of. And yes, technically we already had a soft reboot with Origins, as I mentioned. It reinvented the gameplay. It even retconned everything the game's told in Assassin's Creed 2. And you know, that hasn't really gone well with some people. But what did that really lead to? Not much. Layla's story fizzled out, the story threads with Basim in Valhalla never went anywhere, and eventually Ubisoft hit reset again and tried to win back old fans with Mirage. And then even again after that, they tried even harder to make Assassin's Creed even more beginner friendly by removing any type of pre-established Assassin's Creed lore in the newest game, Assassin's Creed Shadows. A real reboot means doing better than that. It means actually listening to your fans, because the fans know better than who is currently at the top of Ubisoft. It means trusting the writers and your own developers. We've seen examples of Ubisoft developers leaving the company to go elsewhere, and hey, Expedition 33 was a result of that, one of the best games ever released. Current Ubisoft also needs to let go of the obsession with giant maps and releasing stories with no soul. If Ubisoft is serious about turning things around, a well-executed Assassin's Creed reboot could be their lifeline. Imagine a remake of the classic games, done with the modern design, up-to-date motion capture, better writing and actual care. That could breathe new life into the franchise. Maybe we'll get a hint of that with the upcoming Black Flag remake, or maybe they'll butcher that too. At this point, who knows? I'm kind of worried about that remake, I'm not gonna lie. God forbid it, but imagine they strip back on the motion captured cutscenes and replace them with static back and forth shots like we see in the RPG games. Imagine they ridicule it with RPG elements and turn it into Assassin's Creed Odyssey 2.0. I would lose my shit, because there's even a high chance that they take down the original Black Flag listing just to release the remake. Until Ubisoft shows that they're ready to take real creative risks again, all we can do is wait and hope they remember how to make something special, just like they did back in the day when almost every release that they put out was often a banger. But as of now, there is very little faith to be had with this current Ubisoft.